Go Hunt Live show hosted by Todd Nevins.
This is Todd Nevins, and I interview people that had seemingly normal lives and careers going, but they pulled the ripcord to epically reinvent themselves in order to pursue a life full of purpose and passion. This episode is sponsored by PrintDirtCheap.com. Jeff Chrisman, the founder of Print Dirt Cheap, and the crew there are rock stars when it comes to delivering top quality printing at a cheap price. If you've met me in the last 3 years and I handed you a business card, it was printed by Print Dirt Cheap. They're my online digital printing company for everything. They do banners, company letterhead, a ton of direct mail pieces, funky decals, even menus for restaurants, over 30 categories of printing products, and yes, business cards. And they do it fast and they do it cheap. Jeff has streamlined every little aspect of the business to provide the perfect user experience, delivering the best product in the industry. I have personally been to the offices and I have seen it firsthand. But see for yourself. Go to printdirtcheap.com and use promo code GoHuntLife and get $10 off of your order. Or if you want to get a sample of their work, click on Sample Pack and they'll mail you one out for free. Go to printdirtcheap.com, use promo code GoHuntLife for $10 off of your next print job. This episode is also sponsored by one of my companies, Click Placement. We are a pay-per-click marketing agency specializing in PPC badassery. We have literally helped hundreds of companies over the last decade drive engagement through paid search advertising using Google AdWords and Bing Ads, LinkedIn, and of course, Facebook. We work with startups, established businesses, and nonprofits to customize campaigns to drive sales or leads, build brand awareness, sell products, or generate mobile app downloads. Hit us up at clickplacement.com or on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn to start a conversation.
Regret would be the one. So I remember sitting at work thinking there has got to be more to life than this. Although I was very good at my job, I just had that feeling that if I left, no one's really going to notice.
That is Andrea Jordan, and she's a location-independent digital nomad and business strategist with a global list of clients. And her area of expertise is helping people that feel stuck. She's built her business around the pain that she went through because she was once right there. She was a corporate attorney for 17 years, working long hours and making big money, six figures, when one day she looked at one of the partners in the firm and thought to herself, do I really want to be him when I grow up? She saw how much that job took away from the rest of his life, and she actually got queasy and sick to her stomach. That's what she needed to make the change. We spend a lot of time in this interview talking about her transition phase, the phase of, I know I'm going to do this, but I need to follow a plan to make this change logically and to make it work, to make it stick. She now travels the globe and runs her business from anywhere. My conversation with Andrea Jordan starts right now. Andrea, thank you for jumping on the show today.
It's my pleasure. It's great to be here.
We've got to first give a shout out to Nat and Jody for connecting us, and they are guests from episode 49 and now friends. So shout out to Nat and Jody.
Definitely.
What city are you in? And if you were to walk out the door, describe what you would see.
Right. I am in Puerto Vallarta in Mexico. And if I walked out of the room I'm in now, I would see what they call the romantic district spread out in front of me with hills behind it. And I'd be bound to see a lot of kittens and cats because I'm house sitting and caring for a large number of them.
All right. There is a romantic district in the Puerto Vallarta. It's not the whole town.
No, it's this lovely little district, and it's all the beautiful old colorful buildings. The kind of, condos are there way, way down the other end. So if you want to come and see the lovely buildings and go to the little taco stands, the romantic district is the place to be.
That's the spot. All right. How old are you? Are you married? And do you have kids?
Let's see. Age 45. Always have to think about that for a moment. 45, not married, no kids, 2 lovely nieces.
Beautiful. All right. What is your profession and primary ways that you make money right now?
I am a business strategist. I work mainly with creative entrepreneurs to help them build and grow their businesses. So I offer one-to-one sessions. They can be one-off, or we can do a package together. I also help people business people with their blogging. I love to write, and so I brought together the strategy side and the writing side into a course I run called Kickstart Your Business Blog.
And you do this all online. You are a full-time traveler and house sitter, and you've built your business online, but you weren't always this. You had a 17-year career as an attorney, a normal type of a job, type of a profession. Take me back before you pulled the ripcord on that life, and it was just 3 years ago. So take me back to 2014, 2013. Like what was a typical week, and what were you doing, and where were you living?
Right. At that stage, I was back in New Zealand. So my legal career started in New Zealand. That's where I'm from. I think I had about 4 years working there. And then I did what most Kiwis do and go on their OE, their overseas experience, which is typically 2 years in London. Somehow I got that slightly wrong and stayed there for 8 years. And I worked as a corporate lawyer there, doing brilliant work, lovely clients, and traveling a lot. Made the decision to come back to New Zealand, but by that stage decided I didn't want to be a lawyer. So I was contracting and doing a lot of government work. So back in 2014, I would have been working for a government agency. I would have been working what I used to call part-time, which was 40 hours a week, because in the big law firms I worked in, 40 hours a week was your minimum. Yes, and that was in Wellington, New Zealand, that I would have been working back in 2014.
What was your profession, like specifically within law? What was your area of expertise?
I was a corporate lawyer. So basically, in London, I was mergers and acquisitions is what we called it. So buying and selling companies. I also listed companies on the stock exchange there, and then just any number of commercial agreements. So partnership agreements, shareholder agreements. So a whole lot of writing, but in a very technical way.
So you came back to New Zealand and you had a job doing what you had been doing your whole life. What started, you said earlier, but I didn't want to be a lawyer. Like, when did that start, and what happened to trigger that thought?
That was when I was back in London, and London was fantastic for the kind of work that I had. The kind of experience I had there, I simply couldn't get in New Zealand. But it did mean some incredibly long hours and a lot of stress. And after a while, I just really wasn't handling it that well. And I got ill, just a not serious thing, but I was signed off work for a couple of weeks. So I decided to get out of London, and I went down to the Devon coast, which is beautiful, to a little town called Padstow, and I rented this teeny tiny cottage. And I remember waking up on the first morning there, and the first thought in my head was, I don't want to be a lawyer anymore.
What did you do with that thought that morning, that day? Did it invigorate you? Did it scare you? Like, what were you thinking?
It was exciting. And it was a relief, I think, to actually say that out loud to myself, because it had been building for a while. And yes, I was quite freaked out. What the hell do I do now? It was a relief, and it was so nice to be down there, because I was going hiking in the morning and just really relaxing and getting over my illness, it affected my balance, so I had to be careful where I was walking.
So you had worked yourself into physically being ill, is that right?
Yeah, I think I had, and it could, honestly, I think it could have been prevented. I wasn't really handling the stress in the right way, and I think not confronting the fact that I didn't want to be a lawyer anymore, that just added to that tension. So yes, I basically had burnt my wee self out.
When did this thought happen? What year? When was that?
That's a very good question. I think that was probably about 2008, I'm going to say.
2008, but officially... Wow. Yeah. Okay. So you have that thought. You were down there recovering, basically. Yeah. Okay. And then you go back to London and go back to work, correct?
Yeah, because at that stage, I was, I've always been a lawyer. What am I going to do if I'm not a lawyer? And so I started to see a career coach, and she was fantastic. And I saw her for a number of months and decided that I would actually like to train to be a coach. And so started down that track. And then a few bits and pieces happened that made me want to shift back to New Zealand. So, yeah, you would think, right, she's made that decision. Right, she'll leap off into a new career. But it's simply, I find it doesn't happen that way. Sometimes you need time to mull things over, particularly when you've been in quite a high-paying career. If you've got used to a six-figure lifestyle and you look around and think, well, unless I want to be an accountant or an investment banker, my options feel pretty limited. So, yeah, it took quite a while for me to work out what else there was that I could do.
So So you were living with the fact that I know that I'm doing something that I don't want to do, but what am I going to do next, and how am I going to replace? It sounds like you had two things going. Number one, you had money, like big income, six-figure income, and identity. I've always been a lawyer. That's what I went to school for. That's all I've been known for. I'm good at it, but I don't like doing it. So what took you back to New Zealand, and when did you saw you were talking to a career coach. When did you start like tangibly forming a plan to make the shift?
Sure. It's funny. So when I got back to New Zealand, I did actually go to work for another law firm. I didn't want to. I was going to go and work within a company and try being on the business side of things. But it was just a little dip in the economy then.
Yeah, that's right.
The crash, yeah. So I ended up going back to work for a law firm. And within maybe 2 months, I was thinking, oh, my God, this is worse than being in London. And it was not quite the job that was sold to me. So I started putting money aside. I thought, right, I am going to earn and save enough to be able to take a year off. And as soon as I have earned that, I'm quitting.
How much were you trying to save? What would have given you a year off?
Now, let me think back. That was a wee while ago. I'm going to say it was between 30 and 40,000 New Zealand dollars.
All right.
That I in the bank. And then I decided that I wanted a new camera, so I stayed a little bit longer so I could afford that.
That's an expensive camera. What did you own? Like, did you own a home? What were your possessions that are also certainly a factor when you're considering not only quitting and doing something else, but you were going to quit and travel? What did you own?
I owned a property. It was an investment property, so I'd never lived in it. So that it was an apartment. So that was one thing. I owned a car. It wasn't a fancy car. I don't do fancy cars. Mm-hmm. So it got me around. And then I owned, clothes and books and stuff, all the usual, things for the kitchen and all that kind of carry on.
A couple of themes have bubbled up over the last 50 some odd episodes of this podcast. And at the core of people making life altering decisions, it comes down to a few different things, like death, like you only live once and I'm doing something I don't want to do, or it's regret. Like, I don't want to be doing this in 5 more years or 25 more years and have these same thoughts, or it's like I'm going to go serve a bigger purpose, or it's to right a wrong in society, or love. Like, there's multiple themes that are coming through. What was the core thing that drove you to that decision of, I don't like doing this?
I think of those choices, regret would be the one. So I remember sitting at work thinking there has got to be more to life than this. Although I was very good at my job, I just had that feeling that if I left, no one's really going to notice. Another lawyer will step in, take my place, build relationships with clients. And it was quite discouraging, feeling like that I wasn't making much of a difference. And part of it was, I remember looking at one of the partners who I'd worked with for years and years, a lovely bloke. And I thought, do I want to be him kind of when I grow up? And I actually felt queasy because I had seen the hours that he worked. I had seen the weekends that he worked and just how much that job took away from the rest of his life. So it was that combination of things for me that was helping me make that shift.
And when you were making that shift, what did you were just going to take a year off. You've done a heck of a lot more than that. You're 3 years off now, and you've created a completely different identity and life and lifestyle and profession. When did you start formulating this in your current website, learndiscoverbefree.com? When did you start formulating this plan, and how did you take those steps on the side?
Yeah, it was interesting because that year off, yes, I did take that year off. I think I took more than that year off, but then I went back to work. So what I did is I took that year off and I thought, right, I need to do something else. So I started, doing some personal development, bought some books and was working through what my skills are. And I was seeing a different career coach in New Zealand now because the thought of owning my business really hadn't entered my head yet. I thought I was going to be having a change of career. And then one day I went to an event that had all these different things about internet marketing. This is a whole new world for me. And I know for a lot of people it wasn't at that stage, but I never heard of, AdWords or anything like that. So that got me thinking of, wow, there are different ways to live that I hadn't even realized. So I started to look into that sort of thing, started to do a course here and there, and ended up traveling to the States for 3 months and within that year, because I'd always wanted to go Maine and go hiking, and I went to San Francisco and I visited New York. And while I was there, I was doing a bit of writing and starting to look at building a business, and I'd written an ebook and little things like that. I remember being in my San Francisco hotel when I sold my first ebook and doing a little dance of victory going, oh my God, this works. And you know what? And then after that trip, I got back to New Zealand. And that's when I first started house sitting. And I think I house sat then for maybe 9 months. But I really wasn't in the right sort of headspace to be doing things. I couldn't find the support that I needed. I really missed having a team around me. So I decided to go back to work, only doing contract work, doing government work, 40 hours a week, and working on my business after the fact, when I got home. And life goes on. And I think I did that for 3 years, just kind of ticking away, trying to decide what I was doing, basically procrastinating, if we want to be honest. I just, wasn't sure.
What was that year that you took off? What year was that? 2010?
I'm gonna, yeah. I think that, it would have been around 2010. And I think I ended up taking 18 months off because once I started house sitting, I really wasn't spending any money. So house sitting, that was opening up a whole different world as well because, I love animals. And so to be able to move around New Zealand at that stage, house sitting, that opened up a whole different world for me as well. So I was working on my ebook and things like that, but I was such an amateur.
Okay. So you go back to New Zealand and you get a job with the government and you're working on your business on the side. So you've got, I don't know which one would be considered a side hustle at that point, but whatever. You've got two things going, and you're building your next phase of your life on the side. So you're making money, obviously, with the government 40 hours a week, and you quit that job in 2014. Is that correct?
Yeah, that was the last contract that I did. And funnily enough, that was also the contract where I earned the most money per hour that I had since being back in New Zealand.
All right. So you're back there and you're earning a bunch of money an hour.
Yep.
When did you know it was the right time for you to completely pull the ripcord and go all in on this phase of your life?
Let's see. I think there was a 6-month contract that got extended to maybe 9 months. And I think I was about 3 months in when I thought, I can't do this anymore. I'm surrounded by people who are constantly complaining about their lives, complaining about their work. I don't want to be in this environment. It's open plan. And I just couldn't do it. So I thought, right, I am going to finish out this contract and then I'm off. So I finished that contract and it was a New Zealand winter. And let's see what my progress. I think I went to Southeast Asia that year. And for the next 2 or 3 years, I went to Southeast Asia for the winter. So basically, I was a digital nomad in the winter and in New Zealand the rest of the time, because during that period, 3 or 4 years, I was part of a salsa performance team. And so I needed to be back in New Zealand for that training.
What is that? What does that mean?
Dancing on stage.
Whoa. That's okay. So when did you walk? Oh, that's a whole nother thing. When did you walk out of your law career?
3 years ago, pretty much this month.
And how did it feel like when the day you quit? Did you walk out of that toxic office environment for one last time and turn around and be like, never again? Like, what was the moment?
Yeah, I think I may have skipped out of the office. Yeah, no, it was the highest paying, and it was the most toxic environment I think I'd worked in. So I walked out of there just with a huge grin on my face, knowing that I was heading off to do something, much, much more interesting. Now I remember. So I went to Thailand with my friend, and we went sailing, and then I went up to Chiang Mai, a city in Thailand, and volunteered in an elephant sanctuary.
At an elephant sanctuary, okay.
Yeah, and I fed elephants watermelon and kind of hung out. And it was interesting because of that experience. I ended up going back to Thailand the following winter, and then 9 months later, and I ended up volunteering at an animal shelter for about 5 months, looking after about 200 dogs.
Wow. Okay. How are you paying for all of this? You were earning a bunch of cash. You pulled the ripcord. Now you're traveling. You're Chiang Mai and Thailand and volunteering. But how are you paying the bills? Are you working off of savings, or did you have ebook money coming in?
No, the ebook, I'd stopped that because it was very much just an experiment. So at that stage, I'm very good at saving. So when I am working, I basically had put aside what I called my adventure fund. And I had put aside money specifically for business development, personal development. So I had savings put aside. And then I was simply starting to build the business I have now and getting, a little bit of money from that, and then balancing that out with the savings that I had. And also, when you're somewhere like Southeast Asia, your costs are just incredibly low. So I wasn't actually spending that much in terms of living expenses.
And so that first year, which is, you go from skipping out of the office. So it's euphoria. Like, it is complete and total euphoria. I'm on vacation. I can't believe I did it. I finally did it. And then it kind of, has a routine set in? Was there ever a time in that first year where you thought, man, I need to go make some more cash? Do I reach out to that contact that always said, hey, the door's always open if you want to come back? Was there ever a moment in that first year or in the last 3 where you thought, I could go make that much money each hour for a year and bulk up my savings again?
No. Every now and then I think, gosh, it would be nice to have that steady income, but that's as far as it goes, because I did actually have someone say to me, I went to visit a friend and she was head of a legal department, and she said to me, hey, we really need some people. Would you be interested in coming in for a contract? And I had walked into her office, all open plan, people elbow to elbow, artificial lights, and thought, oh God, get me out of here. There was no way I was going back to that. So I did other things just to bring in a little bit of income. I did some gardening. I did some dog walking. I just did little bits and pieces like that to help top up my income and pay for all my salsa shoes and those salsa costumes. They're not cheap to get all those sequins put on.
That's your priority. So when you're living somewhere now, you're house sitting, and you and I are speaking. You are in Puerto Vallarta. On your blog, you've got a rundown of the places that you have been, and it's awesome. So you're house sitting, and you're gardening and walking dogs a little bit here and there for some extra side money. You are just getting those through just relationships when you land into a town, and you're picking up odd jobs. Are you still doing that?
No, not when I'm doing what I'm doing now. because of the visa situation, I couldn't work on the ground as such in somewhere like Mexico. But I'm, tax resident back in New Zealand. It's a funny thing when you're a digital nomad. The law hasn't quite kept up to what people are actually doing. So if I went and got employed to be a dog walker here, I'd need a work visa. So no, now these days my income is from my business strategy work. So the dog walking, what have you, that was when I was back in New Zealand and had to pay for those sparkly costumes. Gotcha. So now I don't need to pay for those. My expenses are a lot less.
So are you teaching salsa classes? Are you taking them? Are you just doing it for fun? Is that also a source of income?
No, I was never at the teacher level. I was part of a group of amazing people, and I was, down the bottom skill-wise. So no, I don't have any illusions about teaching. I do occasionally go dancing, but with Latin America, they don't dance until about 1 a.m. That's when they start. And I like my sleep. Plus, I have to kind of consider as a solo traveler, that's probably not a bright idea to be, out and about 1 a.m, 4 a.m. So I generally only go dancing if I met friends and go out with them. So basically, I just, dance around the house.
Okay. So, and I want to dig into house sitting because Nat and Jody, who introduced us, they are house sitting gurus and help people figure out how to do it themselves. So logistically, go through, let's say, your last 4 or 5 stops. Where were they? Where were you at? Okay.
And they all weren't house sitting because not every country is kind of house sitting kind of savvy. So South America, they really don't have many house sits, so they're just getting to know what it's all about.
All right.
So right now I'm in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, and I'm house sitting here. Before that, I was in a little town not far from here, about 5 hours, Ajijic, which is a big expat community, and I house sat there for a month. Prior to that, I was in Argentina for about 3 months. So I did house sit for a week there, but that was for an Australian woman, so she knew about house sitting anyway.
Sure.
So I was in Buenos Aires for about 2.5 months, and I went down to Ushuaia because I needed to get on a boat to go to Antarctica. So I went there in February, which was amazing, and I did a little bit of hiking down there. So the house sitting has only sort of kicked off again in the last couple of months because Mexico, there are a massive amount of house sits to be done here.
Sure. All right. So you're traveling, you're staying at hotels, hostels, Airbnbs. Like it sounds like you've got a lot of living expenses.
Yeah, I mean, there are, but there's still a lot less than, say, if I was in New Zealand, because if I stay in an Airbnb, and generally I stay in a place for at least a month, they have a lot of discounts. So for an apartment, it's maybe 40, 50% off what you'd pay if you were doing it night by night. So I very rarely stay in hotels or hostels. I move from apartment to apartment. So there are some living expenses, but not nearly as much as in New Zealand. And then I do a house sit and my living expenses dramatically drop because I've got no rent, no utilities. So it balances out still to be a very, comfortable lifestyle.
If you look back at the last 6 months, what did you spend more money on, your rent or plane tickets? Or is there another bigger expense in there?
No, it probably was rent because I haven't flown around that much because I was in Argentina for all that time. Yeah, I would say it was rent.
And you're a digital nomad, and that means Wi-Fi. How does the Wi-Fi come into play in regards to whether you're house sitting or whether you're Airbnb-ing it? I mean, you always need Wi-Fi. Where do you get it?
Generally, where I'm staying, I will always, with an Airbnb apartment, always message them and say, listen, how's your Wi-Fi? I work online. I need access to Skype. I need this and this. So they know in advance. And the same with a house sit. I'll always tell them, hey, I work online, which is great for them because I've been around for their animals, but I need good Wi-Fi. I haven't really struck problems except for when I was in Guatemala, staying at a beautiful apartment. a stunning view of the lake and the volcano, and the Wi-Fi was appalling.
Okay. So,
And
all right.
yeah,
What do you do?
well, at times grit my teeth because it was taking me 3 to 4 times as long to do something. But then I pick my office up and I take it to a cafe that has got good Wi-Fi. And sometimes that meant getting on a boat and going to another village. Luckily, that didn't happen much. Or I change things around. I might do a lot of writing offline. And then as soon as the internet comes on and is good, I'll just get in there and I'll speed through scheduling out blog posts and get everything done.
Yep.
And I do try and do that for social media and blog posts, is schedule things out at least a couple of weeks in advance. So if I hit a bad patch of Wi-Fi, it's not game over. I've still got things ticking along until I can get Wi-Fi again.
But you're also you're a business strategist, an online business strategist. So your clients are all over the world. And that means, I'm assuming you have Skype appointments with these people all over the world. And if you tell them, just like our conversation this morning, I mean, it happened at 10 a.m. on a specific day. How do you handle that if 10 a.m. on that day and the Wi-Fi is terrible? What's going on your side?
Honestly, it's the same thing that I would do if I hit that in New Zealand, because our Wi-Fi isn't always that great. I would go to a friend's place. I would go to a cafe that was quiet where I could put headphones in. I'd go to a co-working space. There are so many of these around, and I would, book a room that I could do Skype in. So there are lots of options. And what I do is I never book calls the first 2 days when I arrive in a new place. Because if I get to an apartment and the Wi-Fi is shocking, it gives me time to find a solution. It gives me time to go and find a cafe. So I always block out that time to make sure that, I don't run into a panic, having to run around town and find a cafe when my Spanish is not, it's not that great.
All right. What are some of the other unexpected challenges of the digital nomad life that nobody would understand except another nomad?
Let's see. Yep. Sometimes it is the wanting to throw your laptop out the window because the Wi-Fi doesn't work.
Okay.
It is actually, it's funny. It's isolation. Sometimes you can get a little bit too isolated. You won't necessarily be living in a place where there are other digital nomads or even other expats. So that can be a bit isolating. So you need to be careful about that because your world can shrink a bit too much.
All right.
So that's one thing you need to be aware of. And then sometimes technology, when you can't pop to the local store and get a new battery for your laptop, or you can't go and talk to someone because your hard drive just won't do what it has to do. So those kind of things, I had issues with my hard drives when I first left, and they're like, oh, just give us a call. And I'm like, I'm in Mexico. The time difference is a little awkward. And so it's things like that you constantly have to find solutions for.
Does Amazon deliver to wherever you normally are?
Amazon might, but you run into trouble with the local postal system. So Mexico doesn't have the best track record about receiving or sending post.
Yeah.
So I do actually need a new laptop battery. And luckily the homeowner who I'm house sitting for, she's in the US at the moment. She's very kindly taking delivery of a battery for me. But in Argentina, the post can be very pricey to send things, and things, again, don't always turn up.
Got it.
So sometimes you can't get things sent to you. Where I was in Guatemala, Lake Atalan, there's no way I could have got something sent to me. So you do have to work around that, and sometimes just let go of that irritation. There's nothing you can do about it until you get, a couple of months down the track.
Yeah.
Then I'm very good at finding workarounds for things.
Okay. I actually missed something and I want to go back. How do you find your house sits? What are you using and how are you finding the next spot you're going to go to?
That's funny. I literally just wrote a blog post on that because I had so many questions from people. So there were four main ways I wrote about. The first one is house sitting platforms. So I pay an annual fee to be a member, and homeowners put their house sits on there and I simply apply. So that's one way of doing it.
Okay.
The other way is Facebook groups for the particular area that you're going to. And that's how I got this sit. I basically posted in the Facebook group, hey, I'm a house sitter. I like to be in Puerto Vallarta, June, July. Is anyone going on holiday and needs a house sitter? I've got lots of references, 3 years experience, and I have people contact me that way. When I first started in New Zealand, it was friends and family. I just reached out and went, I would like to house sit. And it was summer, so lots of people were going away, and I got lots of house sits. And then I started getting referrals from people. So that was another way. And then I think the fourth way was a slightly odd one for Guatemala, actually. It's a website called Workaway, which normally is you go into an environment like a yoga studio and you work like for 4 hours each day and you get free food and board. But I saw a house sit come up there. And so I ended up house sitting in Guatemala for 6 weeks.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
So how do you handle health insurance and cell phone plans?
See, interesting. Health insurance, we have a completely different concept in New Zealand around health insurance.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, we have something called ACC, which is the Accident Compensation Corporation. So that's a government-provided health plan, basically, and you pay for it via your taxes, or if you want a bit extra, like private hospital, then you have your own medical plan. But it's a lot simpler than it is in the States. So when I'm traveling, basically, I have travel insurance, and I make sure that has unlimited medical benefits within it. And that's the way.
So that's a company that offers travel insurance while you're abroad. How much is that? How much does it cost?
Let's see. It varies. You'd probably be paying anywhere between, I'm thinking New Zealand dollars, $1,000 to $1,500 for a year.
What's that in US?
0.7 is the exchange rate, so about 700 to
that
1100.
Is cheap.
Yeah, I mean it covers everything. So in theory, it covers everything. So if my laptop's stolen and all of that.
Oh wait, but what if you break your leg? Does it cover that, or this is?
Yeah. That is the main reason that I get it for medical. It's that, and some of them have a high excess, so it might be you can't claim for anything below $200. So just a quick trip to the doctor won't be covered, but if I need to go to hospital, that's covered.
All right, and so your airfare. How do you get cheap airfare when you're jumping from one country to the next?
I look at Skyscanner, and there are other platforms that are similar, like Kayak, I think, in the US. Mm-hmm. So I use that, and I find interesting ways to use that, because if you put into Skyscanner where you are and then don't actually put a destination in, you can find some interesting deals that if you just put in your destination, you wouldn't be aware of. You might need to pop via a different city and then come into the one that you wanted to. So Skyscanner is my first port of call when I go looking for flights.
All right. And so what do you own now? I mean, you obviously are traveling with a carry-on and a piece of luggage. Is that it?
So I have a backpack that goes in underneath the airplane, and then I have my carry-on, which has my laptop, my camera, and all my technical bits and pieces. Back in New Zealand, I do have a storage unit, and it has about 10 boxes was my aim when I was repacking, and that is full of things like photo albums, old-fashioned, and basically what I call my travel treasures. So things like a beautiful rug I bought in Tunisia. All of those.
What is that?
So in Tunisia, I bought a beautiful rug, and so that is one of the things that is in my box back in New Zealand.
Okay, got it. So, describe your current business in a little bit more detail. Learn, discover, be free. You are doing this now as your profession, as you're traveling. Like, and you said you were taking courses a number of years back. You didn't know about AdWords. Have you built up your business up to this point? And is it word of mouth or with specific online tools that you've implemented?
Let's see. Facebook groups has been the main thing because they are a great way to connect with people, either to go in and say, hey, this is what I do, this is what I sell, or simply to meet up with people. So a current client of mine, we met up. She's from Uruguay, and I was staying in Uruguay. And she was so excited to see the fact that someone in this group was actually in her country because no one ever goes there.
All right.
We just met up for coffee and got chatting. No intention of, I wasn't selling her anything. We were just meeting up. And then a couple of months later, she said, hey, I'd really like to work with you. So, sometimes it's simply connections like that. And I offer complimentary strategy sessions for about 20 minutes for people so they can get to know me and we'll look at their business. And that's another way that I get to know people. And word of mouth starts to build as well. If I have one of those sessions with people and they had a really good experience, then lots of the lovely people I talk to go onto Facebook and give me a shout out and recommend me to their friends. So yeah, that's the main way.
Who are your typical types of clients? Are they small business owners? Are they in corporate? Like, what's the typical type of person that you are helping?
They are small business owners. They're either working by themselves or they've started to outsource some of their work. They are in generally their first 1 to 3 years of business. They're definitely not corporates.
What is the biggest challenge that you've heard over and over from those people?
Let's see. Finding consistent clients, I think, would be one of the biggest challenges. Another one would be they've got so many ideas, different businesses, different things they could do, that they get themselves completely tangled up and stuck and then don't progress forward with any of their ideas. So that's actually another, I don't see it as a problem. I see it as fantastic, but too many ideas and no sort of process to untangle themselves.
Are there consistent industries that these people are in?
Not so much. I do like working with creatives, and that means either they are strictly in a creative profession, like a photographer or a writer, or people who just are creatively minded. So they might have a communications business, but they do painting on the side. So I seem to attract those kind of people. And it's probably because I write and I'm a photographer as well. So I naturally can understand what they're trying to do. You've got that creative right brain element going on. You need to somehow bring in processes and systems, which are not very sexy, to actually support your creativity. And I have both of those things going on with a law degree and my accounting degree. I'm a very organized person. And then I love the creativity of my photography and my writing. So I can blend those together to help people out.
All right. So if I'm working like you, if I'm working at a insurance company, let's say, but my passion is photography and I'm taking photos on the side, free time, how do you, there are many different types of photographers, whether you're taking pictures of scenery or in your travels, or you're taking photos at weddings or events, things like that. How do you help a person that is sitting in Miami, Florida, build their photography business?
The first thing I do is sit down with them and ask them what they would like their life to look like, because there are so many different ways to do things. There's one photographer I know of that she's an architect. And on the weekend, she sells architectural photos at a local market. Now, she's happy with that. She doesn't want to be a full-time photographer. She loves doing the architecture during the week. So that is very different from someone who wants to be a full-time photographer. Maybe they want to be a destination wedding photographer, traveling all over the place, and photography is the only thing they want to do.
Right.
And then maybe there's someone else who has a part-time job. They love the steady income, but they want to become a pet photographer 4 days a week. So the first thing I do is say to people, what would you like your life to look like? Do you only want to work 20 hours a week because you have 3 kids and that is the time that you have available? Do you want to work 40 hours a week in your local town, but then spend your winters somewhere sunny? So we take into different considerations how that would work. So that's the first thing I do, because there is no sort of cookie cutter approach. I wouldn't say you have to follow this system as a photographer and you'll be successful. It doesn't work like that. I want to get to know the person and make sure that their business is supporting the lifestyle that they want to have.
All right. If you are talking to someone and you're helping them and coaching them and you've developed a plan and it makes sense, it's a logical plan, although, some of these things you've got to throw logic aside, because logic means make more money, be safe, be stable, versus, pull the ripcord and do something beautiful. What if you can't get that person past the hump of actually implementing what would work for them?
Now that is when my coaching training comes into play, because what I did, I think I mentioned when I was thinking of not being a lawyer, I trained as a life coach because I wanted more of a balance. I had the technical business, but for every person who is in business, a lot of life stuff comes up. You have to deal with self-doubt. You have to deal with confidence issues. It is a real roller coaster. So I would basically put the business aside for a moment and I would talk to them about what's going on in their brain. Are they freaking out because they haven't got a budget in place? They don't know if they can actually afford to do this stuff. Are they procrastinating because this isn't really the business that they want? Or are they just plain scared and they're nervous about putting their work out there because they might get judged? So I would tackle those things head on and give as much support as I can, because at the end of the day, I can't force someone to do something. It's completely up to them, but I can provide them with support and let them know they're not alone. None of these issues that we business owners have are new. There are a whole lot of people who have gone through this before. Yeah. And I think that's what my clients like about what I'm doing. I'm very honest about the mistakes and the screw-ups I've made. So they get to know that, it's okay to try things out. It doesn't have to be perfect. I just need to get started.
Beautiful. All right. So how many countries have you been to so far?
I did count them up the other day. It's definitely over 50.
Over 50. What does your next 6 months look like? Where are you going after Puerto Vallarta?
See, I don't plan like that. I think I'm going to spend July in Puerto Vallarta. I would love to head up to Vancouver Island. I'd love to see some bears and some wildlife. So I'm looking for house sits up Vancouver Island way. And that is really as far as my plans go. I might go back to New Zealand for the summer, which is, Christmas time. But I don't have places set in stone. I don't have them booked 1 month after the other. I really like the flexibility of, say, being in Puerto Vallarta, thinking, I really like it here. I'd like to stay another month.
Wonderful.
And doing that.
So what advice do you have? And you just hit upon it a couple of minutes ago, but somebody that's sitting there in their office with the earbuds in, listening to this conversation and thinking, man, Andrea's got it down, but how do I do it? Like what should their first step be in stepping towards pulling the ripcord and reinventing?
Come and talk to me. I think it's what I was talking about before. It's getting to know yourself. What do you think you'd like? Does a travel really appeal? Do you kind of know that you want to be a photographer, but you're a bit nervous about it? Have a think about all those kind of things that you'd like to build into your life. And it doesn't need to be for the next 5 years. Just think how you'd like your life to be in 6 months or a year's time. Because once you start to get those pieces together, then you can start making progress. And you've got to take action. There is no point doing what I did and think about it for years and years and years and do little bits but never actually get going. Take action. It doesn't have to be this perfect, wonderful website that you set up. If you like photography, go and take a photo of the things that you like. Get started. Get better professionally, technically. Get building on that, because that's completely within your control. Do that every single week. And if you want to be paid for it, think about the different ways you can be paid. Tell your friends you're thinking of selling it. Find a local market to go to. Start just small and taking steps. Don't feel that you have to have this massive business plan and everything set in stone, but you must take action. You must do something towards that goal, or you will just sit there for years and years wishing that you were doing that thing.
That is awesome advice. I've got one more question for you. All right. The date, May 3rd, 2010 at 7:20 p.m. So May 3rd, 2010, you sent out your first tweet. Do you remember what it was?
No, I don't. And that's so funny that you checked. I have no idea. God, what was it?
Setting up a new blog this week about my journey from a corporate life to a life of freedom. Domain name chosen, now to show my geeky side.
Oh, that's so funny. Yeah, that was when I would have been first looking into internet marketing and doing that ebook.
Awesome. Where were you? Do you remember specifically where you were?
Yeah, I would have been in Wellington, and I would have been Wellington? Actually, no, I probably would have been in Auckland, and I would have been planning that 3-month trip to the States.
A lot has transpired in the last 7 years for you.
I know.
Awesome. All right. You can find Andrea at learndiscoverbefree.com. Also at Traveling Jordan on Instagram. And then on Facebook, it's Andrea Jordan, Business Strategist. Andrea, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Don't forget to hit up the rock stars at printdirtcheap.com. Use promo code GoHuntLife for $10 off of your next print job. For fast, cheap, and high-quality online printing, it's printdirtcheap.com. Hey, Life Hunters. Thank you for listening to this episode of Go Hunt Life. If you like the show and would like to support it, go to iTunes and do this. Subscribe to the show, leave a rating, and review it. It helps. And thank you. If you or someone that you know has quit their normal life to follow their dreams, I would love an introduction and maybe interview them on the show. You can find me at gohuntlife.com and also on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Pinterest at Go Hunt Life. Until next time, stay weird, dare greatly, and ripcord out.